Neil, do you ever get tired of us women?
No.
We won't talk about our resting bitch face and dark, tired eyes anymore. What'd you think?
I'll take that over a guy talking to me about his sexual conquest any day of the week.
Okay.
Hello and welcome once again to another One Thing podcast. I'm your host, Neil Bauer, and I'm joined as always by the lovely Kim and Jody from ePayments, a fresh approach to payments. This is our first podcast of 2022. And to start it, we actually have a very special guest. I'm going to let Kim do the honors. Kim?
Thank you, Neil. Today, folks, we have one of the most beloved figures in the sports industry. Ron Seaver is the founder and president of the National Sports Forum, which he founded in 1996, which who can say that anymore, right? Prior to that, he was the director of sponsorships for the San Diego Padres. He's an entrepreneur, an educator, a philanthropist, and most of all, he is a mentor to many. Welcome, Ron. We are so excited to have you.
Hey, Kim, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invitation. I love working with you guys. I can honestly tell you that my hair was one color back in 1996. Wasn't this color, but it was definitely one color. That's a long time ago.
I had hair back in 1996.
Yeah. Well.
Mine was a different color too, Ron.
Well, Ron, I mean, obviously you had a vision, and I would love to hear how you decided when you were in that transition that you were going to start the National Sports Forum.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those, I will sum it up by saying it's one of those somebody oughta type of businesses. In other words, you know, we've all had them. It's like, you know, it could be as simple as somebody ought to really install a stop sign here at this corner because it's dangerous. Well, that's kind of the same philosophy that led into the National Sports Forum. Way back in the 80s on into the 90s, I was overseeing sponsorship and promotions for the San Diego Padres and loving it, absolutely loving it. And out here in San Diego, it's a terrific market, really great fans. Padres haven't had a great history of success. So things like promotions were really, really important to getting fans to come out to the game. You know, it's nothing like a little sweetener like a hat or a concert or a fireworks show to get everyone moving towards the stadium. So this was very, very important for us. So for me, my job at the end of every season, we'd get to like July, August, and it'd be time to start looking at the coming season. It's budget time. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, what can we do next year that we haven't already done to death? You know, what can we do that's new? You don't want to do the same old all the time. So, you know, for me, it was like, wow, there's got to be something out there. Who's doing things? Well, fortunately, you know, Major League Baseball is part of MLB. And back in the early 80s, they started an annual marketing meeting. And I got a chance to go out in 1984 while I was with the Padres. And I absolutely fell in love with it because it was everybody who did what I did, but with other teams. Mm-hmm. And you very quickly realize that while we may compete on the field, we certainly don't compete in the front office. So with that being the case, let's be there to help each other out. You know, don't worry that I'm going to steal your season ticket holders or I'm going to steal your sponsor away from you. You know, you might be like reluctant to give me that. It's like, hey, trust me, you know, if Bank of America is interested in opening up checking accounts in Los Angeles, they're not going to accomplish that by sponsoring the San Diego Padres. It's way too far away. So help me out and I'll help you out with some of the guys that you're looking for. So, you know, this really was, I just was absolutely just in love with this whole idea sharing and getting a chance to get to know everybody, which I never did because you kind of live in your own little silo there at the team. And these people they understood what I did. And we all really helped each other out. And so after, I don't know, several years of this, it got to be the 89, you know, or so. And I'm sitting in the bar where all good things happen at night and talking to the other guys. And I'm saying, you know, this is good. I'm liking this. I'm starting to hear some of the same ideas again. The thought occurs to me that, you know, I wouldn't mind going to the NBA meetings, you know, or what would it be like to go to the NFL meetings? I bet they've got some good ideas. Well, you know, the other guys looked at me and they said, you're crazy. Why would you go to the NBA meetings? I said, well, why not? well, Ron, we're Major League Baseball. They're NBA. I mean, why would we go to their meetings? I'm like, hey guys, look, I'm not strapping it up. I'm not playing center field. I'm out there doing what they're doing. I'm trying to sell tickets, trying to keep my sponsors engaged, trying to keep the merchandise going, trying to find new streams of revenue. I mean, it's an expensive business. And every year, they never come to me and say, your budget next year, you worked hard enough, make it $20 million less. No, they want more. So you got to find more. And it's like, I'm starting to hear the same thing. It would be kind of cool to go to the NHL meetings and listen to what they're doing. I bet they've got 6, 8, 10, 18 ideas, and everyone said, well, that's just crazy thinking. You just don't do that. You just don't do that. And I'm like, well, somebody ought to start a meeting and just say, hey, if you're in the business of doing what we're doing, the revenue generating side, the capitalists, as I call it, why don't y'all come together, check your egos at the door, grab a Budweiser, sit down here, and let's talk about what's working. Let's talk about what's not working. Save me some time. I'll tell you about the stuff I did. And hey, if you're going to go down that road, don't do this, and really be there for each other. So I everyone thought that was stupid, crazy idea. I wound up, the Crocs sold the team, new ownership came in. It's a good time for me to go leave. I left the team, went on the agency side, and now doing what I did for the Padres, but on the other side of the table for about 3 years. But I never forgot that idea of somebody audit. It's like, wow, it would, this is good. Agency stuff is good. I mean, you get your weekends off and you get paid a lot more money. I mean, that's good. But I really kind of miss the camaraderie of being with the guys who used to do what I do, and being able to share ideas. If I read something about, like, before we started the podcast, we were talking about a program the Indiana Colts were doing. When I was at the Padres, I couldn't pick up the phone and call it. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't now. I can. I pick up the phone and call and say, listen, send me some info on that. That's a good idea. I got to do that here. And so that was the forum. It's kind of its genesis. As you know, Kim and Jody, we laugh about it. The very first year we tried it, we actually tried to put it together in 95, launch it in 95. And we don't tell anybody about this one. This was the idea that didn't work. We had 10 speakers. But we had 10 really good speakers, but we only had 3 people that bought badges. So, I now tell people that there's laws in states that you can't have meetings with 3 times as many speakers as you have attendees, but, we stayed with it. And we just knew over time, folks would talk to other folks. I mean, it's not like we can advertise on, ABC or ESPN. It's a very finite market we're going after. So it really does depend on social and word of mouth. So that really is the birth of the forum.
It's so great. Well, so when you got all these teams together, and it is very similar what everybody does, what was the number one thing that really surprised you once you started to get a following and attendance about all of these different moving pieces coming together?
Wow, that's a great, I don't know that anybody's really ever asked me that question before. What surprised me? Well, it was a surprise that it took a long time to really catch fire. I mean, the first 7 years of the forum, I lost money every single year, just putting the event on, let alone what it cost to keep the doors open for the rest of the year. But just on the hard cost of the meeting, I couldn't even make my expenses. So it took a while for it to catch. So, I love running into people now that come in and they see the room full and they're like, oh my God, this is like a license to print money, man. Did you really catch, lightning in a bottle? It's like, that was a long bottle. Trust me. They don't know. And but it's so funny, but that does surprise. I really thought, and even to this day, Kim, I mean, not naming names, but there's organizations that we have never seen in now 26 years of putting this on that just don't come to the conference. And I think that's surprising too, because why wouldn't you? I mean, it's not like I've got, any answers. I don't have any answers. I've got a lot of questions, but you're going to find them in this room, and nobody's so smart that they can't learn from somebody else. And just one conversation on that bus ride or one conversation in a hallway, with somebody that you get a chance to find could really open up so many channels and so many ideas for you, or an introduction. I got introduced to you and Jody, from somebody who used to come to the forum, probably 12, 15 years ago. That's how it works.
Well, and then too, through that, you have really helped. As I said, you are a mentor to many. You have interns. We've discussed how you had people that came to you with an idea and now have gone off and started their own companies as well. So when this is the last thing I'll ask, and then I'll let everyone else ask you a question. But what would you say is the one thing, as far as, when you're working with someone and mentoring them or anyone that's involved with you, what's the one thing you would want them to walk away from, with an experience with you?
Well, I hope it's been helpful. I mean, as you know, I don't write short emails. I don't tell short stories. Everything is, so you gotta be prepared. But sit down and talk with them and really kind of help them out. But it's really my own hope that they'll do the same thing forward, pay it forward. That this is the kind of thing, it really is a family, whether there's that thing or not. There really is a family in our industry. It's a huge industry. But as you start to get into it, you start to realize we all kind of circle up. We're all, we may change jobs. We may be with a ball club this time and an agency the next time I see you. But once you kind of catch the bug, the sports bug, if you would, the sports business bug, you stay with it. So the key is, can we help you out with what you get from the forum? Will you sit there and be there for other people as well? So that you can call. So when Jody has a question, she pick up the phone. Can she call the Detroit Pistons and someone will answer her and talk to her? I mean, not the talk of, you're on one side of the table, I'm on the other side of the table, but there really is a difference amongst, and I've heard this from agencies, corporate sponsors, people who are part of the forum and people who aren't part of the forum. It's a different kind of conversation. They say when you're trying to do business with fellow people from the forum, it's like you're sitting on the same side of the desk instead of sitting opposite sides of the desk. So I think that's what I'd love to see them do.
That is a good lead into my question, because you have been great for us as a mentor too. We've been able to pick your brain. And one thing I know about you is you are a very brilliant writer. I think you've wrote a book and you are very good at jingles. Writing, you hear so many people say they want to write a book. And I know just Kim and I writing content for our website, it's just tough. Like, is there something you do? Like, is there one thing you do to get in that mind frame to write? You just shared with us that you've wrote all of this content for the forum. Like, is there something you do to get in that space in your head to write, or what puts you in the mood?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I don't really talk about the book I wrote. And I wrote it actually, and it came out of going to a conference on conferences. I'm a firm believer that there's an association for everything out there. Trust me. There's no, association of sponge ringers. There's an association for it. And so I went to after I was mentioning, after so many years of losing money, I started looking for shows on how to put on shows, so that, you could learn. And so I would go to these conferences and I'd sit there, and they usually have the perfunctory luncheon, and you go around the table and people are introducing themselves. And again, I was amazed at how many associations there are out there. And when it came around to me to introduce what we do, and I said, well, I put on this conference of professional sports teams and events that from the marketing, the ticket sales, the sponsorship, the business development side of things, and now from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we put on a show to discuss on those, what we call our 5 pillars. And I was explaining it, and they were like, oh, well, do you know Michael Jordan? No, it's not athletes. In those days, Michael was still a ball player. And it's like, but let me ask you guys a question. As I go around here, you've got some great associations. I'm just curious, who sponsors your events? And it's something I had noticed from talking to people that put on gatherings. They bring herds together, but they're not very savvy at sponsorship. How do you get sponsors involved in something like this? And it's not enough just to, say, hey, we want to thank Louis Pizza for today's pizza. As you know, there's a lot of things that you want to do to activate the sponsors and really make it worth their investment in what you're doing. You want to give them access to your group. So again, the light bulb went off, and I said, somebody ought to write a book to people that, not sports people, but people that put on events, meetings, events, associations, gatherings on how to do it. And it's called Getting Yourself Sponsored. And it was focused on events and things, great groups. There's a revenue stream out there that people really don't do a very good job of tapping into. But I don't really talk about it at the forum because most of the guys, that's where I learned it, is from sports. You know, in sports, if it's not nailed down, you slap a logo on it. And if it is nailed down, you slap 2 logos on it. You know, I mean, sports is definitely very, very well developed in terms of how to use sponsorship and introduce sponsorship into what you do. So that's how that led into it. So how did I write it? Honestly, I took a hotel. I got a hotel room for 2 nights. True story. I told my wife, I'm going to go write a book. She goes, have you ever written a book before? And I go, no, but I write really long emails. And she said, well, you know, this could be a little different. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't know. I'll stop after 2 days and then I'll wait a month and I'll go back and then I'll go back. I mean, I think I did that for 5 or 6 months. And honestly, I actually wrote the last chapter, Jody. I wrote the first chapter last. So when I first sat down, I thought, well, I better outline what I want to do in this book. I'm going to outline it. So I outlined the first chapter. And by the time I got to chapter 2, it spent me so long outlining chapter 1. I just said, oh, screw it. I'm just going to write it. So I started chapter 2, got all the way to the end, and then realized, oh, crap, I never wrote chapter 1. You know, and so I had to go back in and then put the first chapter in afterwards.
Oh, that's great. That's terrific.
Well, I had 2 One Things get canceled because you've already talked about them. Fantastic job. You're super ahead of the curve. I cannot wait to talk to you at the sports forum. It's going to be super exciting to kind of go through some of the things you've already brought up. Ahead of the curve in terms of digital assets, which we already talked about, ahead of the curve in terms of putting on these type of events. The one thing that we've had challenged with, we work with Nike and Adidas and other people that work in the sports world. Now, one of the things that happens is we ask the people that we've worked with for 3 years, would you like to join the other side, agency side, to help, you know, so you can stay in touch? Exactly what you were saying. How do I keep reaching out to the people that I work with? How do I keep relevant in this space? And in the 15 years we've been in business, that has never been successful. They either burn out immediately or they lose interest. They just can't make that transition from the sports world into the agency world. So with that said, what's the one thing from your experience you would let people know about transitioning from one side of the equation to the other? What can they prepare for?
There's things to love about both sides, agency side as well as team side. And personally, most of the people that come to work here, they all come in thinking they want to go to work for the teams, but most of our guys leave here going to work for agencies. So I always think that's interesting because if I were to do it again, I've been on both sides. I actually like the team side better. I just like the narrative is different. Every day is different. And you really feel like you're part of something, you know, so when your team wins, I mean, right now, if you're a Cincinnati Bengals employee, you know, or you are, you know, you're a Rams employee, you're fired up. I mean, it's just, you know, and it's not the same way if you're one of their agencies. So I kind of miss that whole thing. But from the agency side, you know, you have the narrative changes. You have different clients that you're working with, different objectives and things of that nature. And to your point, Neil, it can be a burnout depending on trying to stand on top of all of this. So the key to it is just being able to know yourself. You know, everything's not right for everybody, you know, knowing that there's pluses and minuses and knowing where you ultimately want to wind up. Where do you want to wind up when all this is done? You know, and I think as you start to manage your own career and manage your day, manage your life, it'll start to be very clear where you should be, where you ought to be.
That was fantastic. That's it. We did it. We made it in with less than a minute to go. At the buzzer. Ron at the buzzer.
Ron. You were terrific. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, that was easy, you guys. You know, I thought you were going to ask me a lot of really tough questions here, but that was good. Thank you very much.